I was declared dead. My best friend married my wife, and now I want my life back. The night I died was an ordinary one. I kissed my wife, Sarah, on the forehead before heading out. She was in the kitchen, humming softly while washing dishes, a towel draped over her shoulder. I remember thinking how beautiful she looked, how lucky I was. If I had known that was the last time I'd see her as my wife, I would have held her just a little longer. Don't be late, she had called after me. I won't, I had promised. It was raining heavily that night. My car skidded off the road on a particularly sharp turn. I remember the crash, the glass shattering, the world spinning, and then nothing. When I woke up, I was in a small, dimly lit room. A fisherman had found my body washed up near the river, barely breathing. I had been in a coma for weeks. No ID, no way to identify me. The nearest town was miles away, and the clinic I was taken to had no resources to search for my identity. It took me 3 months to regain full consciousness. 3 months before I could even remember who I was. By the time I made it back home, I'd already been buried. The first thing I noticed when I returned to my neighborhood was that the house had changed. The front porch had new chairs. A different car sat in the driveway. There were toys scattered across the lawn, something that hadn't been there before. For a moment, I thought I had the wrong house. Then the door opened. Sarah stepped out, cradling a baby in her arms. My heart clenched. We had talked about having kids, but when I died, she hadn't even been pregnant. How much time had passed? And then he walked out after her. Daniel, my best friend, my brother in all but blood. He wrapped his arm around her waist, kissed her cheek, smiled at my son the way I should have. I couldn't breathe. I watched, frozen, as they laughed together, as she leaned into him the way she used to lean into me. I wanted to call out her name, to let her know I was there, but something in me told me to wait. Instead, I stepped back into the shadows. I needed to know why. I spent the next few days piecing my life together. I visited the cemetery where they had buried me. There was a tombstone with my name on it, a fresh bouquet of flowers resting at the base. She still visited my grave. That meant something, didn't it? Then I went to my old office. My name had been erased from the records. Daniel was now the CEO. He had taken my business, my house, my wife, my child. And the worst part? No one seemed to question it. I tracked down an old colleague, someone I trusted. Daniel handled everything, he told me. It was hard for Sarah, man. She lost you, then found out she was pregnant. He was there for her. He took care of her. I clenched my fists. Of course, he had. Of course, the man who was supposed to mourn me had used my death as an opportunity to take everything I left behind. Did they ever, before I died? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He hesitated. No, he said. Not that I know of. I wanted to believe him, but doubt had already seeped in. One night, I followed Daniel. I watched him leave the office, drive home to my house. I waited. Then, when the lights went out, I knocked on the door. Sarah answered. She was wearing one of Daniel's shirts, the way she had once worn mine. Her eyes widened. Her breath hitched. She gripped the doorframe like she was about to collapse. Sarah, I whispered. Tears welled in her eyes. Her lips trembled. Michael. Then I heard his voice from inside. Who is it, babe? Babe. He called her babe. I turned before she could answer, before I could see the final betrayal in her eyes. 2 days later, I met Daniel in a secluded cafe. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. You're supposed to be dead, he said, his voice shaking. But I'm not, I replied. He ran a hand down his face. Jesus, Mike, I don't know what to say. Say you didn't plan this, I said. Say you didn't take everything I had the moment I was gone. He sighed. It wasn't like that. You marry my wife, Daniel. You were gone for 2 years. His voice rose. 2 years, Michael. We grieved you. We buried you. She was pregnant and alone, and I was there. I didn't plan for any of this to happen, but it did. I stared at him, my hands shaking under the table. You love her. He exhaled sharply. Looked away. That was all the answer I needed. I sat in my car outside the house that used to be mine. The lights were on, and through the window, I could see Sarah sitting on the couch, Daniel beside her. My son, was playing on a rug. I clenched the steering wheel. I had spent weeks in the shadows, watching, listening, piecing together the life that had been taken from me. I had wanted justice, revenge, even But now, sitting here, I realized something else. I wanted my family back. I stepped out of the car, walked up to the door, and knocked. It took a moment, but Sarah opened it. When she saw me, her breath caught in her throat. Michael, she whispered. Daniel appeared behind her almost instantly. His eyes darkened when they met mine. What are you doing here? I ignored him. My gaze stayed on Sarah. We need to talk, I said. All of us. We sat around the living room, the air so thick with tension it was suffocating. My son was asleep in his room upstairs, unaware of the storm brewing beneath his roof. Sarah's hands were trembling as she held them in her lap. Daniel sat beside her, his jaw clenched. You married my wife, I said, my voice calm but firm. You raised my son as your own. And yet, here I am. Sarah looked away. Daniel leaned forward. What do you want, Mike? I exhaled slowly, my hands tightening into fists. My name, my company, my son, and for Sarah. I hesitated, my heart pounding. For Sarah to decide. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with anguish. Decide? You were my wife? I said. And I died. Or at least you thought I did. I don't blame you for moving on, Sarah, but now you know the truth. I'm here. I'm alive. And I'm not walking away without a fight. Tears welled in her eyes. Michael, Daniel reached for her hand. Sarah, you don't have to do this. She does. I cut in. Because this isn't just about you, Daniel. It's about her. It's about what she wants, not what she settled for. Sarah sucked in a breath. Her gaze darted between us. She was shaking. I could see it. The war inside her. Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Sarah's fingers trembled in her lap as she looked between Daniel and me, her expression torn. I could see the weight of this moment pressing down on her. Two lives, two men, two versions of happiness colliding at her feet. She swallowed hard. I loved you, Michael, she whispered, her voice raw. And losing you broke me. But I built something with Daniel, something real. Daniel sat up straighter, his shoulders still tense, but there was a flicker of hope in his eyes. I clenched my jaw, my heart pounding. So you're choosing him? Tears welled in her eyes. I'm choosing the life I've already built. A sharp, bitter taste rose in my throat. She exhaled shakily, as if afraid of how her next words would land. If I had known you were alive, if things had happened differently, maybe we would be standing in a different place right now. But the truth is, I grieved you, Michael. I forced myself to move forward because I thought I had no choice. And now, I don't know how to unlove the man who helped me survive losing you. I let out a slow breath, staring at the woman I had once thought was my forever. And I realized this was never about betrayal. This was about survival. She hadn't replaced me. She had learned how to live without me. And that hurt in a way I wasn't ready for. Daniel exhaled, rubbing his face as if he, too, hadn't expected this to end in his favor. I nodded slowly. I understand. Sarah let out a soft sob, her hands covering her mouth. But I wasn't done. I turned to Daniel, my voice calm but firm. You stepped into my life, into my company, into my family. And I won't fight you for her. His jaw tightened, as if bracing for the next blow. But my son, I continued, is mine too. And I will never let him grow up thinking of another man as his father. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. He knew he couldn't fight me on that. Because even though I had lost my wife, I refused to lose my son. The months that followed weren't easy. Sarah chose Daniel, and I let her. But I fought for my son. It took time, mediation, painful conversations, but in the end, we found a way. My son would know me as his father. I had shared custody, time to build something real with him. My business was mine again, though I let Daniel remain as CEO. Titles no longer mattered to me. I took my fair share and started fresh. There were nights when the loneliness felt unbearable. Mornings when I woke up expecting to hear Sarah's voice, only to remember she wasn't mine anymore. But then, one evening, as I was leaving their house, Dave ran up to me, throwing his arms around my waist. Love you, Dad. The word shattered something in me, but this time in the best way possible. I knelt down, pulling him close. I love you too, buddy. For the first time in years, I felt like I was home. Not in the past, not in the life I had lost, but in the future I was still learning to build.